You know, I was making a list because I was just feeling so frustrated by all the things that we're expected to hate if it just happens to be from Republicans or people in Florida or Ron DeSantis. But then when, you know, Zelensky does it or Biden does something that Trump did, nobody talks about it. And so we started just talking about like the hypocrisy and how you have to belong to a cult to, you know, when you see Nazis in the US, that is a horrifying picture. The Unite the Right, Charlottesville, and all of those, you know, Trump flags on Trump banners with the Confederate flag and obviously the swastika. But then we see them, the Nazis in Ukraine should not be designated a foreign terrorist. And there were so many examples of this. We thought it would just kind of be fun to be like, well, when they do it or when we do it. So here's disgusting book burning. The image on the left is a memorial in Berlin. It commemorates the Nazi book burning that took place at that location in May of 1933. The others are from a Florida public school after Ron DeSantis's book ban. Then DeSantis had the teacher fired for posting the images. So those are bookshelves in a school that has removed all of the books that were banned by Ron DeSantis, who's the more gentle Trump or whatever they're trying to
this
say.
is the guy that is the good Republican against alternative to Trump.
Did any books get banned under? I mean, like he's awful, but like there's so many things that they said that were going to happen under Trump that actually are happening now under Biden, which is interesting. Anyway, here is book burning in Ukraine. Those are Russian books that they have decided they no longer need and they're going to burn. And then on the right are a bunch of, you know, liberal apologists who are now all for the book burnings that are happening there. So, you know, remember at the beginning of the war when like Russian opera singers, Russian athletes, anybody Russian was canceled or whatever.
Yeah, I saw that on the bottom there. You can see, agreed, burning books is anathema, but these are not books so much as wolves of oppression camouflaged as sheep-like books.
It's like
so this is like the you know, scary Jews or something. You know, it's like a whole. It's like it's just cult shit. Like you literally have this philosophy that burning books is bad. Period. Here's a guy saying burning books is bad. Period. Full stop. Absolutely, except for if it's those sniveling bastard Ukrainians.
I mean, again, it's like the whole problem, I think, with liberals is that they don't have any ideology. It is always just lesser evil, not Trump. You know, it used to be not George W. Bush. Right. Now Bush is good. But like, if you don't actually have an ideology that you can describe or discuss with people where you don't even bring in Republicans, like I could talk about all of the policies I am in favor of, and it would have nothing to do with Republicans. Wouldn't even have to mention a Republican. But everything with Democrats is like, that's what they are. And we're like one step better.
And it is lack of ideology. It's like sports. Like, okay, if I'm a Warrior fan, which I am, Draymond Green, he's a bully. He cries to the refs all the time. He does a lot of bullshit. The rest of the league hates him, and they're right to hate him.
Right.
But if Draymond Green joins your team, you're going to love him.
Right.
And that's because it's all about winning, period.
Yeah.
And you can overlook all the flaws because your team is doing well. Right. But you shouldn't be on Team Democrat for some bullshit sort of reason. You should have an ideology behind your support.
Yeah.
And for most people, they just think, well, I've decided Dems are better, and they are, but that's a whole nother issue.
Yeah.
You know, but that's enough for them. So they just, instead of calling out like the Draymond Green in your party for stuff.
Right.
It doesn't matter. It's just sports. But you know, otherwise you should call out the bad players on your team, but they won't because it's sports to these people.
Here is some democracy for you. I just have to point this out. Ukrainian President Zelensky ordered the banning of the nation's 11 remaining left-wing opposition parties. So this is the democracy we are fighting for. Communist Party of Ukraine was banned. All of its assets were seized by the state.
That's normal.
That's, you know. How about
child soldiers?
This is hideous.
We're
Pat
pushing
and
the same
I are both
image.
pushing the button at the same time. Okay. Thank you. Horrific, right? This is how it's always written up. Gaza children are being used as soldiers. It's a war crime. However, when it happens in Ukraine, as fighting intensifies in eastern Ukraine, brave children sign up to fight the Russian invaders. We spoke to one girl named Olga, age 12, who tells her story of taking up arms to fight invading Russian troops. Listen, I mean, I can understand why you would, I mean, horrible. Of course, there should never be a child soldier. There shouldn't be war, but like, I can understand the framing on some level, right? Even, do you remember at the beginning when, is her name Tamini, the Palestinian girl who slapped the Israeli soldier? And at the beginning of the war, when the invasion first happened, there was a lot of propaganda being put out, right? It was like the ghost of Kiev, and there were all these things. And one of them was the resistance. And there was this brave young girl who was slapping a Russian soldier, and they used that image, and that's what they said. And it was actually an image from like 7 years before of a Palestinian girl slapping an occupying Israeli soldier who was never called a hero by anybody in the media because Israel is our friend.
Look, there's so many fluff pieces that are just bullshit. I mean, I listen to NPR on the way to work a lot. I mean, there's some valid news to get from it, but there's a lot of just propaganda. You can see like the propaganda pushed at sort of lefty Democratic people. And they always have like these sob stories about the women fighting the wars in Ukraine. And it turned out that the women in Ukrainian armies were getting abused, and it was a very teeny small percentage. But you know, when NPR does a story like this, and the same with the the kids fighting the war, it's like, this is such a righteous war that they have to do this, you know. But they make it out to be like all the women in Ukraine are now fighting in the war too, and the kids, everybody's grabbed a gun.
Yep.
And it's not the case. I mean, and look, there are Nazis on the Russian side. Absolutely. It's the same thing, but we are funding a certain group of the Nazis.
Right.
So that's
right. Exactly.
That's the important part here.
Lots of conflicts in different regions that we do not send hundreds of billions of dollars of weapons and aid to. And as somebody wrote in the comments earlier when we were doing the train wreck, like Biden went to Ukraine the same week and gave money to Ukraine to help their pensions, their health care, the same week that he did not go to East Palestine. I mean, you know, it shouldn't just be about optics, and it's not, but that's a fucking horrible optic. The president of the United States abandons his own people.
And I mean, if you frame this around 2024, if you're looking at it from the Republican perspective,
yep.
If the Ukrainian war is unpopular next year, it's not going to get more popular than it is now. It's going to just get less. Yeah. The longer this goes on, the less popular it is.
Yeah.
So you've got the contrast of Biden being over there, giving them money and pensions. You got our homeless problems here. You got
no health care for our people, and like,
you know, poisoning your own citizens, no health care, you know. Trump can actually say he handled COVID better. He can attack Biden on how he handled COVID, because, you know,
and he's calling for peace negotiations, right? He's calling for peace as Biden's trying to start wars with, you know, Russia and China. And again, like, Trump is disgusting. Almost started a war with Iran by killing one of their generals. I mean, he like bombed Syria with the mother of all, like, he's a horrible, horrible person. I don't think he's some big pacifist. But when you are coming, like, when most of America is starting to question why we're sending so much money to this conflict, when leak after leak is coming out that there is no way that Ukraine is going to repossess some of the cities that have been taken over by Russians, definitely not Crimea. And when they talk about how a majority of people in Crimea, even by American polls, say that they feel that they are Russian, they are happy to be part of Russia. When you have China trying to broker some kind of peace, when you have Turkey and France and that being rejected by Biden and NATO, that is, again, it's not a bad look. I mean, it's a horrific situation, but that is going to be used against Democrats. Of course it is.
Yeah, and if all that matters to you as a voter is stopping Trump, that's why you should care about some of the stuff that's happening.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
that's why
They'll
progressives
blame us
being,
for pointing it out, though. They'll say it's
but
our fault.
that's why progressives not pointing this stuff out is their flaw, because there's no contrast. You're not giving anyone an alternative. If you're a progressive, you supported Biden's everything that's happening in Ukraine. If you're a progressive,
Yeah.
you support his COVID policy. You support us not getting Medicare for all, because if you wanted us to get Medicare for all, you would point out how the pandemic was our opportunity to get Medicare for all.
Yeah.
So I got nothing on it, but our progressives are shitty. They are shitty.
I really feel like they've
Do
done
not put
so much damage to the
your
movement.
faith in these people. Like, I don't want them to go away. I don't want to primary them. We can get progressives in other positions.
Yeah.
But if your strategy is electoral politics to get the changes we need, it's a losing fucking strategy, period. We know this. And there's things I like about Marianne. That's another thing. But I mean, I'm getting way off course here. But
all right, well, let's go back to a couple more things, because I know we're getting late. But here is January 6th insurrection, horrible. But imagine if that insurrection had been funded by a foreign country and was actually successful, the way the CIA backed the far right insurrection in Ukraine, in Maidan, right? I mean, if that had happened here, I can't even imagine if we had found out that Trump and his followers, all those Proud Boys or whatever insurrectionists, the MAGA crowd, had been funded by the KGB or whatever they are now. Like, I mean, what we are expecting other countries to just swallow because we believe we're the greatest nation on earth.
Yeah, what's that phrase? Good for you. Not, I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever.
I think Jesus
But
said
I mean,
it.
we literally, Russiagate turns out to be next to nothing, right?
Yep.
And we ran on that. Democrats ran on that forever as some horrible usurping democracy.
Why Trump was illegitimate. For 4 years, they said that Trump was illegitimate.
And look, Russia was fucking with things. They always have been. They always will. We always fuck with things in other countries.
Right.
But we are like guilty of like flat out overturning
democratically elected
in countries, like
all the time.
Yeah. The idea that we aren't doing this. But so like the point is, Russiagate was nothing, and it was made into all this stuff. Like if another country did that, anything to us legitimate, it would be the end of the world. Like we would, it's just so different. The rules for you and me are different if you're American versus every other country.
Even just like China is saying they might be giving weapons to Russia, and the US is aghast. Well, I mean, that's in their interest to help strengthen Russia, right? But going back to the liberals are constantly talking about the big lie and who's pushing the big lie that Trump really won in 2020. And it is a big lie, but so was Putin putting Trump in power in 2016, and Democrats, talk about that nonstop they still talk about it. I don't know. Do we want to keep going? It's already 6:30. We have so many more. How about democracy? Here's Georgia Republicans advance omnibus anti-voting bill. Gross. Encourages more mass voter challenges, bans drop boxes, restricts what addresses voters without stable housing can use for voter registration, and more. It is disgusting. Absolutely. There should not be any impediment to allowing people to vote. But then here are Democrats who are kicking the Green Party candidates off of ballots in places where they're worried that they might chip away from Biden in 2020. There was also, what was it, like 130,000 voters in Brooklyn in 2016 primaries were scrubbed from the rolls. Why do you think that they were scrubbed from the rolls?
Yeah, and that was where
Bernie was very popular.
Hillary won the city where Bernie grew up in,
where 125,000 people couldn't vote, showed up to vote, and their name wasn't there.
Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, I think most people here probably remember it, but remember the CPT joke in New York? Obviously
No,
not,
but
because I have to remind you. So in the primary, it's a critical moment where Hillary is getting shellacked by Bernie. She's coming back to New York. It's a must-win state because if Bernie takes New York, she loses. What does she do? She goes on stage with
yes, okay,
Bill de Blasio and does the
yes,
CPT
yeah,
joke, which was colored people time. It's a stereotype that black people are lazy and they are
yeah,
late to things. And she
yeah,
does a CPT joke and says, CPT, I'm late to this show because of CPT time,
yeah,
congressperson's time. And they laugh.
hilarious.
Can you imagine going to a must-win state after Bernie is shellacking you and pulling off that joke? Like, the media did everything they can to pretend that didn't happen. But I mean, that is somebody that is confident they're going to win New York.
Yep.
And she won New York. She beat Bernie in Brooklyn, and 100,000 votes were suppressed. I mean, she had New York in the bag, and
she knew it ahead of time.
She knew it.
Yeah, that's democracy is on the ballot. And we already have calls for. I saw this on Twitter today. I don't even know who that person is. Claude Taylor. I used to think blue checks were had a thing, but I think he might just pay $8 a month. But no, but I do know who. I mean, who is Claude Taylor anyway? Wants to keep her off the ballot. They're already saying we don't want any challengers. Keep them off the ballot in our great democracy. Okay, we have drilling permits. Biden outpaces Trump in issuing drilling permits on public lands. We have Trump, disgusting. Can you imagine that he would still cavort with and give weapons to the Saudis after Khashoggi was killed? Oops, there's Biden with MBS. I mean, it's just one thing after another. It's so jaw-dropping, the hypocrisy, and nobody cares.
And Biden promised to make him a pariah. He said, I will make his administration a pariah. And there's that video, if you keep playing it, is him fist bumping him. Like, you can, if you're a politician, you can't find a way to not fist bump the guy that you said you would make a pariah.
I'm more concerned with the fact that he gave them billions of dollars of weapons, but I hear you. None of it is good.
Of fist bumping. It's because the press is in the bag. Like, they're not going to point out any of this stuff.
Never going to point this out.
The press could take this one issue and hang Biden on it. They could take the train stuff and hang Pete on it. They could do. They have tremendous power because the mainstream media controls all the narrative, and they control all of our Democratic friends who don't know shit about politics are so susceptible to whatever they're told by mainstream media.
And the other thing was, and they brought this up here, but Shireen Abu Akleh who was killed by Israeli soldiers, just point blank killed. They assassinated her, a journalist, a Palestinian American journalist, and we did nothing. We didn't hold Israel to account on any part of that. We didn't punish them, nothing. And then, of course, we have Biden continuing Donald Trump's footsteps in pursuing prosecution of Julian Assange. So much for press freedom. Keep going.
Oh, I thought you were going.
I'll keep going. Do you want me to keep going?
Let's go. What do we got? What do we got?
Oh, here we got vaccine-only approach. So in 2020, Dr. Tom Frieden said, am I hopeful we will have a vaccine in the coming months? Yes. Do I think this will get us back to pre-COVID reality? No. Vaccines take a long time to get to people, often have stumbles in rollout, and don't protect perfectly. Very important, but won't end COVID. And where has she been, by the way? Walensky, spot on. Combating COVID-19 requires a comprehensive, multi-pronged approach. Masks, the scarlet letter, tests, treatments, vaccine, only available to people with insurance now. Those holding out for the vaccine alone are going to be sorely disappointed. Time to beef up the dimensions we have on hand already.
That was her then. What about now? What do we got now?
I mean, I'm so depressed. Another shot. Yeah, masks off. Basically, masks off. It doesn't matter. None of it matters because Biden's a Democrat. No masks, no masks, no protections. We're ending the state of emergency. I don't know if we're going to get to our COVID section today. So we're ending the state of emergency. How about,
I don't think we're going to get to COVID, but
yeah. But we have a little bit. A year ago, the CDC director said that 400 is a huge number of child COVID deaths. Yet that total has now increased, and this was already from about a month ago, to 1,730 child deaths. And the CDC response is to further weaken recommendations for schools and community mitigation. I mean, do you remember when Trump was president, there was a death ticker on CNN? 100,000 deaths on the front page of the New York Times was an incalculable loss.
And so if you're a news organization and it's important to report the daily total, which it is, and you get rid of it because it's Biden and Democrats, that's wrong. But 1 million is not news. 1 million people in the US dead from COVID is not news. That's a little suspicious. Like 1 million people doesn't make a blip on the radar of the news.
Well, and right away they started trying to do, remember they trotted out their toady, Leanna Wen, who said that probably it's been overcounted, which of course is a lie. It's not been overcounted. And in fact, they now think that cases at least have been undercounted.
Way undercounted.
Yeah, way undercounted.